The Lazarus Group is back, or maybe it never really left. A Dun & Bradstreet database is compromised. More than 33 million are said to be affected. British Travel Association ABTA suffers a breach. Notes on identity theft. Netherlands voter information sites hit with DDoS. Turkish hacktivists or government operators are suspected. And the U.S. indicts 4 in the Yahoo breach. 2 of them have FSB connections. Time for a message from our sponsor, Dragos. There are socks for this and socks for that. Our sponsor, Dragos, would lead you out of that socks box, because not all socks are good for your socks, and ICS won't fit into IT socks. Well, that's how Dr. Seuss might have put it, but Dragos can explain it in a manner fit for adults. They've got a new white paper that can help any organization that operates industrial control systems work through the challenges of establishing a security operations center that meets its distinctive needs. Most socks are modeled on the ones that have been built for IT systems, and they're just not cut out to fit industrial control systems. Go to Dragos.com and download the white paper now. Build your sock right, and you'll build yourself a capability that meets and grows with your ICS needs. Again, that's Dragos, Dragos.com, for ICS Insight. And we thank Dragos for sponsoring our show. Major funding for the CyberWire podcast is provided by Cylance. I'm Dave Bittner in Baltimore with your CyberWire summary for Thursday, March 16, 2017. The Lazarus Group is back, the North Korean hacking syndicate implicated in earlier instances of both fraud, as in the Bangladesh bank SWIFT caper, and data theft, as in the Sony hack. Symantec has fingered the Lazarus Group for a wave of bank fraud in 31 countries. The Lazarus Group is widely believed to be a criminal operation run by and on behalf of the Kim regime in North Korea. The affected banks in the latest Lazarus Group campaign were concentrated in Poland, with the U.S., Mexico, Brazil, and Chile being home to other heavily targeted institutions. Pyongyang is facing an economic pinch that's squeezing even a society as austere and devoid of ordinary markets as the Democratic People's Republic of Korea. When China embargoed North Korean coal imports in response to that country's missile tests last month, observers predicted a surge of cybercrime to make good the loss of North Korea's single biggest source of funds. Pyongyang has denied any involvement with the Lazarus Group's activities, citing reports to the contrary as foreign provocations orchestrated from Seoul, Washington, and other parts of the civilized world. Dun & Bradstreet sustained a data breach that exposed contact information for some 33.7 million persons employed by companies and U.S. government agencies. D&B acquired the database when it bought Net Prospects in 2015, which should arouse some interest in cyber risk assessment during M&A due diligence. Who illicitly obtained the data, how did they get it, and for what end remains matters of investigation. There's been another, smaller but still significant breach at ABTA, Britain's largest travel trade organization. ABTA disclosed that some 43,000 individuals may have been affected in an attack that came through a web server maintained for ABTA by a third-party vendor. Breaches of this magnitude always rightly arouse concerns about identity fraud. New Data Security's Lisa Bergen noted to us the role criminal aggregators now play in facilitating identity theft. They cross-reference and assemble surprisingly complete identities, which they sell on the black market. Such comprehensive identities are called fulls in the criminal markets, that's F-U-L-Z for those who may not speak Leet fluently, and fulls enable criminals to do an awful lot in the name of their victims, including accessing victims' legitimate consumer and social media accounts. Younger people seem most targeted, lots of under 30s, and even more disturbingly, lots of under 21s. New Data shared some advice on how to reduce your risk of identity theft in social media. First, be selective and careful about who receives your status updates. Second, do some profile maintenance. Clean up your posts. Third, use the highest, most restrictive security settings available. Fourth, don't share personal information without necessity. Birthdays, addresses, phone numbers shouldn't be posted everywhere. Fifth, don't use obvious personal information for security questions, and don't expose the answers to security questions online. Your high school, your grandmother's name, your pets, all of these show up too often in authentication questions. Finally, watch for changes to your credit score and odd charges on your bank and credit card statements. And if you're a victim, by all means report it to police, banks, and others who can help you. Tensions between Turkey and EU members Germany and the Netherlands appear to have been manifested online. Most recently, in a distributed denial-of-service attack, 2 Dutch voter information sites suffered yesterday. Many, perhaps most observers, see this as Turkish government-inspired and possibly Turkish government-directed. It demonstrates again the difficulty of distinguishing state action from patriotic cyber rioting, and also how low the barriers of entry to political influence operations have fallen. There's been an evolution of attacks from state-sponsored actors and hacktivists, and organizations are investing in a variety of technologies to help protect themselves. Tim Bandos is Director of Cybersecurity for Digital Guardian.
From a state-sponsored perspective, basically these are groups of individuals or organizations that have the intent of stealing, intellectual property, information that can either improve maybe their economy, something that they can sell for whatever reason. And hacktivist is really, some sort of cause associated with breaking into an organization. One of the last companies that I worked for, one thing that we specifically worked on was, genetically modifying, GMO type technology, and that was heavily against a particular threat group. So they would commonly target us and attempt to break into our organization or cause some sort of denial of service. So
take me through, what do those types of attacks from those groups typically look like?
From a state-sponsored perspective, one thing that we would see is commonly, targeting phishing emails, spear phishing attacks. But we also saw that evolution, right? They were leveraging third-party networks as an entrance vector, right? So they would target that organization and come in laterally, or they would leverage some sort of proof of concept technology that we just stood up out of nowhere, and they were even aware of that. So now you run into this: is there a potential insider also feeding, outsider, that type of information?
Even with all the advancements in technology, it still comes back time and time again to the human factor. And you talk about insider threats. What's your take on the best ways to protect against that?
Yeah, so from an insider threat perspective, it's one, having visibility into, your data movement, where your classified files are, understanding contextually your environment. And then when you see those things triggering within a solution like a data loss prevention, type technology, you can respond a lot quicker, right? And you're aware of that, from that perspective. One thing that we saw a lot of times when individuals actually leave a company, they'll do a massive download to a USB device, and then take that technology over to the new company. Technology like DLP can actually prevent that type of activity from occurring, or at least detect it and notify the analysts. But you're also hearing about technologies such as EDR, Gartner termed the endpoint detection and response capabilities or technology. That's a huge push, and I think everyone's kind of moving towards that now. Gone are the days of just primarily relying upon antivirus or firewalls. They really want to have visibility into what's actually happening on the endpoints, because we're at this point now where we just assume that a breach is going to happen or it can occur. So, notifying or, identifying that activity when it, occurs is, I think, success, right? And then you can kind of remediate and neutralize the second that something happens.
That's Tim Bandos from Digital Guardian. The U.S. Justice Department has indicted 4 men in connection with the Yahoo breaches. 3 are in Russia: Dmitry Alexandrovich Dokuchayev, Igor Anatolovich Shushkin, and Alexei Alexeyevich Balan. The 4th in Canada, Karim Baratov. Baratov and Balan are described as criminal hackers, but Dokuchayev and Shushkin are said to be FSB officers. Major Dokuchayev is in trouble with both the U.S. and Russia. He appears to be one of the FSB officers currently facing charges for treasonously providing information to Americans. Dokuchayev worked in the FSB's Center 18, responsible for liaison with the U.S. FBI in matters touching cyber law enforcement. Police in Montreal have Baratov in custody, and he will probably wind up before a U.S. court. The others are being named and shamed. It appears that the FSB used criminals as, in effect, contractors. Balan and Baratov had apparently been turned by the FSB, which used them to help it gain access to Yahoo data. The FSB was presumably interested in sweeping up the sort of personal information that might prove useful in intelligence work, compromising potential agents, that sort of thing. Balan and Baratov were profiting on the side in the customary criminal market channels. American authorities have asked Canadian police to seize Baratov's snazzy cars. They assert that the rides should be forfeited as fruits of his criminal activity. so expect to see a swell BMW turn up at a U.S. Marshals auction near you. One owner, low mileage. We'd like to thank our sponsor, Palo Alto Networks. You can visit them at go.paloaltonetworks.com/secureclouds. With the adoption of software-as-a-service applications, data now lives beyond the traditional network perimeter, exposing your organization to more malware and threats. Palo Alto Networks helps your organization achieve complete SaaS protection with detailed SaaS visibility and granular control, data governance, automated risk remediation, and malware prevention. Palo Alto Networks has the broadest, most comprehensive cybersecurity for all cloud and software-as-a-service environments. They know that secure clouds are happy clouds. Find out how to secure yours at go.paloaltonetworks.com/secureclouds. And we thank Palo Alto Networks for sponsoring our show. And I'm pleased to be joined once again by Marcus Roschecker. He's the Cybersecurity Program Manager at the University of Maryland Center for Health and Homeland Security. Marcus, saw an article come by on the Bloomberg Law blog, a big law business, and it was talking about how cyber lawyers are likely to be playing a bigger part in mergers and acquisitions.
Yeah, I think that is true. Lawyers are certainly playing a larger and larger role in the cybersecurity field in general. But when we're talking about mergers and acquisition deals specifically, I think lawyers are going to be playing a larger role because they need to look at and examine any potential problems that might arise for the company that is acquiring another company in terms of cybersecurity problems. There's, of course, the potential that the company that's being acquired has suffered a breach and doesn't even know about it yet. So once the merger or acquisition goes through, the company that has acquired the other company could potentially take on all of the issues associated with that data breach, and that could mean huge costs later on down the road. So there needs to be some analysis of these potential issues, and I think lawyers are the ones to really help out in that regard.
Yeah, and certainly the deal going through with Verizon and Yahoo has brought this issue to the fore.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. So these breaches were all revealed after the merger and acquisition negotiations had commenced already with Verizon. And so now Verizon, of course, is thinking about its dealings with Yahoo. And a lot of people were asking, well, does this mean now that we know about these data breaches that Verizon will pull out of the negotiations? But it doesn't look like that's going to be the case. Apparently, the acquisition price has dropped a little bit, about $250 million, but that's not all that much when we're talking about a almost $5 billion deal.
Yeah, and I think this speaks to a trend that we've heard about certainly in the last year or so, which is that these cyber issues are gaining more and more attention in the boardroom.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I always say cybersecurity is not only for the technologists anymore. Lawyers and executives are playing a much larger role when it comes to cybersecurity. The boardroom needs to be fully aware of all of the cybersecurity issues that a company could be facing. And that means that lawyers need to be involved as well to provide the legal advice when it comes to cybersecurity issues. So it needs to be a consideration at every level of a company, including from the boardroom all the way down to the tech and everyone else involved in the company as well.
All right, Marcus Roschecker, thanks for joining us.
Thanks very much.
And that's the CyberWire. Thanks to all of our sponsors who make the CyberWire possible, especially to our sustaining sponsor, Cylance. To find out how Cylance uses artificial intelligence to keep you safe and secure online, check out Cylance.com. The CyberWire podcast is produced by Pratt Street Media. Our editor is John Petrick, our social media editor is Jennifer Iben, and our technical editor is Chris Russell. Our executive editor is Peter Kilpie, and I'm Dave Bittner. Thanks for listening.